I want you to look at your screen and tell me what you see. How does this image make you feel? What do you think this image is? This is the first image you see when you boot up the game I've created. The game that basically saved me when I was at the lowest point in my life. It all started when I was a small child and I thought, what if I made a game? Well, this is my creation. I know it might seem silly to review a game I've made, but I want to go into details on things that I either had to cut out or details fans might have missed. Basically to tell a story that I've always wanted to tell, but a bit better than what I have due to my busy schedule. Even though no one really knows about this game, but for the few that do, or if this is their first time seeing this game, I hope you enjoy, and that this video can make the game shine. Without further ado, let's jump in. During this review I'll be going over the story, characters, and the original idea. Also, we'll be going over some very dark subjects, so if you're sensitive to that type of thing, I suggest you stop watching the video now, because here's the warnings for the game. One final note is the main character's name is Ahdin, A-H-D-E-N. That's what it was spelled originally, but then I had a proofreader and let's just say we had a falling out and the only thing they changed was his name to Aiden, but that's not his real name, so I'll be referring to him as Ahdin. And by the time I realized that, it was just too far to develop if I couldn't change his name in Disc 1, Part 1. The game starts out in a quite dangerous forest, so dangerous in fact that nothing lives there other than the plants that inhabit it. You can't even hear a single insect. A group of men and their leader Olin are trying to reach some destination but choose to go through the scarce forest, because no living thing dares to enter. Apparently there's a battle going on between the inferior army and Beast, so Olin and his men are trying to reach the cave that used to inhabit Beast, hoping to live and thrive there. However, there happens to be a woman with a baby that has also fled because her town has been attacked by Beast. She asks the men for help, but soon realizes these men aren't friendly. Olin orders for the two to be killed, but instead spares them when she starts begging for her life and the child's life. After agreeing to let her live and the child, he warns her if she makes him regret that decision, she will wish he killed her then and there. 5 years has gone by, and we meet one of the main characters, Ahdin. Ahdin asks Farah, who he calls mom, but knows that she's not his real mom, about the town they used to live in. Farah tells Ahdin that she tells him the same stuff all the time, which Ahdin says he knows. He just likes to imagine what his real parents in town would be like. This is important for later. Farah tells Ahdin the town was far off in the woods, but nothing special. She used to work at a shop when it was attacked by the Beast. Her then boyfriend told her to flee to the scarce forest for safety. As she was fleeing, a burning building collapsed on top of a woman that Farah tried to help. The woman, knowing that she would die, asked her to take her baby boy to watch him grow big and strong, that is Ahdin. As the two play, Olin returns home disgusted at what he sees. He then tells Ahdin to start showing his worth or he will kill him. The next morning he tells Ahdin to meet him at the training grounds outside. Outside, Ahdin sees a golden ring that says a patch has not been made yet. Also take note of some of the soldiers' tents. It seems that there's a ranking system. The higher your rank, the better the treatment you get. However, some of the soldiers are surprisingly normal, while some are still aggressive, but they're not as vicious as Olin and his main men. Also note, when you talk to the women, they seem to hate the special treatment Farah gets from Olin. One states he's only mean to her when Ahdin's around. After sparring with Olin, his men tell him to lay off and actually train Ahdin for the hunt, not to kill him. Olin then agrees but tells Baxter something about making Ahdin's equipment. The next day before the hunt, Olin gives Ahdin Source of Life, which forms a patch with him, something beyond Olin's comprehension. It's a powerful potion that will restore Ahdin's health. To catch this, he only has a few. However, they will automatically refill if he touches the ring outside, known as the Lord's Halo. The hunt is basically a pillage, which is carried out by Olin's men. All that Ahdin has to do is go with Olin to kill the remaining men. Olin tells Ahdin to stay close unless he wants to turn into life essence, which is what people dissolve into when they die, which is what they use for currency. After killing the remaining men, Olin says for a man to lose everything he has worked for is far worse than death. Later that night, Ahdin is sick from what he witnessed, which causes Olin to flip out. Farah asks him if he was drunk, which makes Olin even more madder because he isn't. After Farah tells him to run away, Olin yells his mom will suffer because of him. Now I'm adding this now because I made a lot of cuts during Ahdin's beginning, because I got wrapped into the storytelling. Anyways, Olin doesn't do anything to Farah here. The cut part is he says it's not even fun anymore and goes back to bed, implying what the women have told Ahdin is true, that he's only mean to her when he's around. Back to Ahdin. He runs to one of Olin's slaves, Easton, where Easton tries to comfort him while also giving Ahdin a dagger he received from a beast. The dagger poisons the victim and paralyzes them, keeping them from using their source of life. He says he would have used it on Olin, but one of his men would have saved him. He used to have 3, now he only has 2. Ahdin asks why is Olin mean, and how did he meet Easton? Easton tells him that his hometown was raided by Olin and his men. He also gathers some information on them over the years from the other soldiers. He does think, however, Olin is an admirable man on the battlefield, a good leader to his soldiers during battle, never losing his cool. He also found out Olin was once paid by a king to stay in his army after seeing his skills in battle. One day, Olin heard of a surprise attack on the king and told the king he had no winning chance and should flee. This angered the king and he tried to kill Olin. Olin then fled the kingdom with a few of the king's knights. One of them was Erwin, a well-mannered yet cruel man. Then they met Baxter, the blacksmith. Though he seems kind, he still can't be trusted knowing that he runs around Olin. After that, they met Jax the Wanderer, the nasties of the bunch. Enjoys hurting people any way he can. Anyways, Easton reminds Auden to basically use the dagger as a last resort. 8 years have went by and we see a 13-year-old Auden and Olin discussing a trade with a person known as the Chandler. It seems the inferior army is closing in on the caves, and being outnumbered, Olin buys a small abandoned town off the Chandler, which is a trap. After Auden wakes up and mourns over the death of Farah and Easton, Olin takes him to a cave. He explains to Auden that he traded 1/3 of his slaves and belongings, which included Auden, Farah, and Easton. He also wanted the town to establish himself as king and betray the Chandler, except the Chandler betrayed him, and losing everything is worse than death to Olin. So he killed the remaining livestock, the rest of his men, and destroyed the rest of his belongings, and is going to kill Auden so that Chandler can't have anything. Auden asks if he killed his mother, and Olin states why would he kill the woman he cared about. After the battle, unable to do anything to Olin, Auden uses the magical dagger Easton gave him, and kills Olin. Then a beast-like creature walks in and it fades to black. Let's stop on the story there and discuss the characters and things in a bit more detail. Main character Auden. So what we've seen so far, Auden is basically a normal kid. He is timid, likes to play, but has a very imaginative mind. Imagining what his real parents are like, what his town was like, how different life would be for him if his town wasn't destroyed and he hadn't met Olin. But originally his name was Robin, and his mother was Farah and she was a party member. Also, Robin is much older. One of the first things that was cut was when Auden spends the night with Easton. The next morning, Jax, Erwin, and Baxter show up and tell Auden that Olin is looking for him. Then they proceed to beat up and make fun of Easton for this reason. However, Baxter does not beat him up. Another thing that has been cut is Auden befriends one of the children they have captured during the hunts. This stuff happens in the span of the 8 years. Olin sees this and offers freedom to the boy, and the other boys and the slaves who can kill Auden on the next hunt and make it look like the enemy killed him. After barely escaping death, Auden is mortified because he had to kill his first friend, and he doesn't really trust people after this incident. After seeing that his attempt failed, Olin gets enraged and attacks Auden himself. Jax makes fun of Olin, seeing him get so shook up over a useless child, which Erwin comments that he needs to be killing the remaining men, not the child. Angered at this, a few days later Olin offers to train Auden and takes him alone away from the camp. There he attacks and strangles Auden, thinking that he has killed him, and returns to camp. However, Auden survives and makes his way back to camp wishing that he died, or at least fled, but doesn't want to leave his mother or Easton with these terrible people. Olin, seeing that he's still alive, calls him the devil to himself, seeing that he can't kill him no matter how hard he tries. The final cut part is after a few more years goes on, and the inferior armor is getting closer to the cave, Olin is off by himself bathing, and he kills a few men that try to attack him. It is there that he meets the Chandler, because the Chandler hears of a group of men pillaging, and with the inferior army getting closer, he asks Olin for aid. Olin refuses, and the Chandler offers him some land in exchange. The men don't really trust each other, but they come to an agreement that Olin will offer most of his men and belongings in exchange for the worst piece of land that the Chandler has. Olin tells himself he will offer up Auden, seeing that all of his attempts to murder him failed. And that's basically it. I'll be doing things different than in Arc 1 due to important story pieces. Once again, we'll be going over some dark subjects, so if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, I suggest you stop watching now. Last time, our main character Auden killed Olin, and a mysterious beast walks in and it fades to black. Auden wakes up in a cell with Lost and Ren. Lost tells him his family will be here soon. Take note of that. And they are going to put him through a few tests. Ren the sorceress is there to make sure the tests don't kill him. Lost then paralyzes Auden and begins to torture him. Ren heals him to keep him conscious. Note Ren's comment saying he's more fun than the others. The next day, they throw Auden into a golden bull. Afterwards, Auden explains that every day Lost and Ren comes to play with him, as they call it. Then they feed him. Auden then figures out what Lost meant when he said Auden's family will be here soon. The meat Auden has been eating was the casualties of the trade, so it's either Olin's people or the Chandlers. He teases him and says he could have eaten his mother. Then talks about numerous things Lost and Ren puts him through, and now we see his overreactive mind in play. If you remember what I said about Arc 1 about his imaginative mind that we'll be coming back to, well, this is the time. But this is more of a way to escape his pain, because the torture is making him crazy. The next time we see Lost and Ren, Auden's mind is completely gone. He's talking to himself and saying what he's thinking out loud. Lost compliments Auden for being able to withstand his torture, which he says he's done everything that he knows except, note this only happens to him once by Lost and once by Ren. After a few days have gone by, Auden has a conversation with Olin in his head, where Olin makes fun of him and tells him he should have let him kill him, and this is why being succumbed to others and losing everything is worse than death. He then asks Auden what happened to him here, and Auden is too afraid to tell him while Olin yells and even hits him, calling him weak and pathetic and constantly calling him weak, leading to Auden begging him to take him out of this place. He would rather take Olin's abuse than suffer here. Olin then tells him it's an eat or be eaten world, and he needs to be strong and toughen up if he wants to survive this cruel world, and tells him he can't help him because he is dead. Next we see Auden. I refer to this Auden as Child Auden to keep from confusion. This is a very important character, and I'm going to spoil it now, but this is Auden's imaginative self. His most inner thoughts, his active imagination made him to cope with the torture he's enduring. And you can even say that this kind of started with Olin's abuse. It represents his innocence, his love, and everything about him that's untainted by wickedness, while the real Auden is like a hollow shield where he feels all the pain instead of his innocent self. Now, being his inner thought, this Child Auden asks, is this what Olin felt towards him? Did he see him as weak? And did he feel that way about loss and people having control over you because Olin went through a similar situation? Maybe he has to eat instead of being eaten. Anyways, Child Auden tells him he is all Auden has in this world, and all he ever had. Auden says he had his mother, and Child Auden asks him, is he sure? Now Auden has a conversation with Farah, where he seeks comfort in his mother's arms from the pain inflicted on him, to which Farah is pleased to hear, and tells him this is how she felt all the time being abused by Olin, and that she should have left him to die with his mother, and if it wasn't for him, Olin would have given her anything, and that she was raising him to cope with her situation, even though he isn't her real son. She then tells Auden it's not fair for him to be the only one to survive. Now this is what Auden realizes what she might have felt towards him. Once again, Child Auden tells him he is all he has, and Auden argues about Easton. Child Auden quickly disregards it, as he was just a slave being forced to babysit. Auden asks him who is he, and Child Auden tells him he will soon know. Now Auden doesn't realize who this is, unlike we do. Auden then tells him he has been here for a few months and asks him to help him escape, where Child Auden says he can't because he too is weak, and that this is life and it will never get any better. Auden begs, stating he is so lonely, where Child Auden yells he can't. The next day, a beast named Alf tells Auden Lost and Ren have died, and that he is the new warden, and all he would do is feed him. Basically tell him not to worry because he isn't a monster like Lost and Ren. Right away, Auden realizes that the food Alf brings him is actual food. After some time went by, Alf brings Auden a cake, stating that he's been there for over a year, which makes Auden realize his birthday has done pass and he's 14. Not that this day in particular is his birthday, just that he was already 13 before the trade. The very next day, Alf hasn't come by to drop off the food, making Auden wonder. Then all of a sudden, a mysterious person in golden armor unlocks his cell and gives him a chest with life essence and a sword, then suddenly vanishes in thin air. Auden steps out of his cell, seeing blood everywhere. Unfazed by this, all he can think about is escaping. At the exit, Auden fights a plant-like creature. He's unable to defeat it when another boy shows up behind Auden and kills it. Unable to tell if the boy's friendly, Auden draws his sword, unable to trust anyone, which the boy easily defeats Auden. Auden wakes up outside because the mysterious boy whose name is Ray carried him out of the Chandler's prison. Ray compliments Auden in telling him he is strong, which Auden tells him he is much stronger seeing as he easily defeated him. Ray then apologized and said Auden had a crazy look on his face, not that he blames him after what they did to them there. He then asks how did Auden get out, and did he run into anyone? Auden tells Ray no, and that his cell was unlocked. Ray said it was similar for him, except he got lost and didn't encounter anyone until he saw Auden at the exit. Ray then points out that it's getting late, and he sees a cabin in the distance and tells Auden that they should go there and stick together to increase their chances of survival. And if Auden's unable to trust him, he tells him he can kill him in his sleep and run off. Auden notices Ray's joke, implying that Auden couldn't beat him up while he's awake. Auden agrees but tells Ray he knows he's just using him for extra muscle. Ray tells Auden to be prepared to fight some roaming beast and shows off his weapon, and then offers for Auden to be the leader. But Auden refuses and says Ray's more suitable for that role. Anyways, the party is unable to get inside the cabin due to the beast setting up a magical barrier. After defeating the 4 beasts to set up the magical barrier, the party is then surprise attacked by one final beast. After the battle, they realize up close that the cabin is more like an actual house, and Ray tells Auden to not let his guard down, because the beast might be protecting something inside the house. After entering, they realize someone might be living there, where Auden tells Ray to just kill the owner and take it for yourself, which causes the two to get in an argument when Ray refuses. They then hear a noise upstairs and go up to investigate it and meet a girl. The girl's afraid of the two home invaders, and Ray in this scene gets down on his hands and knees and begs the girl to let them spend the night, offers to pay her or do anything she wants him to do. Seeing this disgusts Auden, however the girl agrees, but tells them they must leave in the morning and sleep on the floor. That night, Auden has a nightmare about what Ren did to him. After waking up, Auden feels sick from the dream he just had. He tries to leave and get away from Ray, but Ray walks out after washing himself and tells Auden he convinced Mila to let them stay. This angers Auden, but he listens to how Ray convinced her. Last night, unable to sleep, Ray was watching the fireplace when Mila sneaks up and was planning to kill him until she was spotted by Ray. Ray smiles at this and tells her he doesn't blame her for them breaking into her house. He tells her he notices that she's too afraid to defend herself, and knows that she doesn't trust him, and neither does Auden. He tells her that him and Auden escaped a war prison together and went inside this house so he can set up a camp, because he thought it was abandoned. However, she threw a wrench into his plan. He points out that he's noticed that she has befriended the beast outside to guard the house, and he bets no one bothers his house because they don't want trouble with the beast, which is why she has to hide, to keep people from finding out. Which is another reason why she wants to kill them, because she doesn't want that secret getting out. Ray also tells her that the beast protecting this house is very weak, that if she lets them stay there, he will protect her in the house. She shoots him down, stating that she doesn't trust him, which he tells her then to go ahead and kill him, but not Auden because he will leave in the morning, and he would probably kill her if she tried to attack him. Mila still doesn't believe Ray, but tells him if he drinks this poison potion, she would trust him. Ray drinks it, and after a while, Mila saves him. She tells him that he is right, that she can't protect his house nor herself, and that she still doesn't trust him fully, but she will let him stay if he follows a few rules. These rules include running errands to a town up north, since she never leaves, protect her in this house, they aren't allowed to kill any beast in the forest area near the house, and that they would need to get a job to get money to do her errand. Ray agrees, and Mila tells him to take the real antidote because she didn't give him the real one in case he made a fuss about the rules. Auden gets angry, telling Ray he's wasting his time, and that this deal with her has nothing to do with him, and he is tired of Ray using him. Ray bumps heads with Auden, telling him he is the one using him, since Ray carried him and is the only one coming up with ideas of survival. Auden walks away, and Ray grabs his arm and tries to apologize. But being grabbed causes Auden to freak out and to threaten him, and he storms off. Outside, he sees Child Auden. Child Auden states that he doesn't have a plan, and all he wants to do is get far away from that cell and people, just to get away from it all. Auden tells Child Auden that he can't trust Ray and that Ray is using him. Child Auden agrees to an extent, but tells him why not use him just as much as he's using you. Fill him out. Plus he's their best chance of survival at the moment, and he knows Auden is lonely. Auden agrees, but will stay with them till he figures out where to go. He wonders if they will allow him to stay after threatening them. Ray walks outside and apologizes to Auden, telling him he did get him in the house and if he wants to leave he can, just no hard feelings towards each other. Auden finally tells Ray his name and apologizes too, and jokingly tells Ray he will stay to survive. Now there is a lot to talk about compared to the first arc. Now remember I said in the first arc that he has an active imagination. This is why it's important to remember that, because it's Child Auden. This just manifests from the torture he endures. So speaking of which, they only torture him like once a week for like 2 months, sometimes 2 times a week. Now in the game it seems like it's the whole 3 months, but it isn't. The torture is making Auden's mind slip and he can't keep track of time. Anyways, Child Auden isn't like a split personality. It's just him talking to himself since he was alone. That's why he sees himself, talks to them, and talks to Olin and Farah in his mind. Now he doesn't know this because his mind is kind of shattered. That's why Child Auden tells him he will know who he is soon, because Auden only has himself. And that's when the whole eat or be eaten kicks in. Notice that after being a prisoner, Auden isn't so timid and kind. He's very aggressive, rude, loud, and barbaric, wanting to kill the homeowner and take it over, not trusting anyone. Now he did go through a lot, but he's kind of acting like Olin. He doesn't want Ray taking the lead or bossing him around, because that would be having power over him, and everyone who has had power over him has abused him. Next is the newest party member, Ray. Like Auden in Arc 1, not much to say about him at this point. However, what we can say is that he's a very strong boy, stronger than Auden. He's also kinder, more charismatic, and more of a leader type person. He seems to be a little rude and blunt at times, maybe a little passive aggressive. Like he basically tells Auden he's stronger than him. Another situation is with Mila. He calls her weak because she didn't defend herself against them and that the beast can't protect her, as they have proven, so she needs him. In the original story, Ray was in the prison by himself, and he wakes up one day with it destroyed, and then he leaves and fights a plant beast creature outside. Take note of the plant beast creature, more on that later. Then he leaves and meets up with Robin much later, but the only thing difference is that this Ray in the original wore a white robe instead of the purple one. Note Ray's robe, the white part's supposed to be angel wings. Also in the original, he was more timid and kind of like Auden. Next is Mila. Not much on her either at this point, other than she studies magic and potions. She has also somehow befriended the beast near her house, and she is as young as Auden and Ray, yet lives alone. She is nervous, a little bit timid and afraid, a bit cowardly if you will, which is why she tries to kill Ray and Auden in their sleep. She also survives on Orb of Life because you don't need to worry about food or hunger when you use them on yourself. Another neat thing about the Orbs of Life. Originally not much is cut out, only that Lawson Wren and other wardens would get orders to torture the prisoners, run experiments, and make them crazy and have them fight where the exit is. And once they have gathered some strong ones, brainwash them to fight for the Chandler's army. Another cut thing is Auden's first fight. First he wanted his opponent to work with him to help him escape, but they were so far gone in the mind that Auden had to fight. And later in Auden's mind slip, he fights another prisoner where his opponent was like how he was in the beginning and wanting to escape. That's what happens in the course of those first few months, until he gets the news that Lawson Wren has died. Now the final cut is that it would show the Chandler talking to some of his wardens, pulling them for a more important task. Basically not caring for the prison anymore, not caring if it gets destroyed or whatever happens to it because he doesn't need any more and he has more important things coming up. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much if you watched it all the way through, and it means so much to me, and I'll see you on the next part.